Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the call-in show that we do on these Thursdays. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. Today is going to be kind of an interesting day. I had a long one, man. I'll tell you what. I had a very long, aggressive day. And it's not aggressive for standards that I may have used to live by, but compared to that now, we did the full podcast and then rolled out and did redacted interview for a while. And before that, I sat down with Tim Kennedy, MMA superstar, stud dude. And Tim Kennedy might be one of the most positive people that has come over. And also, he took off his pants within like 5 minutes of being in my house, which is a thing. It's pretty unusual. The call-in show is our Thursday evening tradition. Thanks for all of you who have joined us. If you guys are on Locals, Locals is dead. Locals is not working. We couldn't actually get it up and running, so I don't know what that's all about. Go figure. However, the link is now in the chat. What I'm going to do, it's over in the Rumble chat for those of you that are paying attention to that thing. And what we'll do is I will pin it in the chat so you guys can click over if you want to be part of that. If you're a member over on YouTube, then you guys can find it. If you're a member of the channel, the community there, you will be able to find it as the last post. It's still the same number that it was the other day. It's the 737 number, I believe. And this is your chance to call in and say what you guys are thinking about. We've had kind of an interesting week. I'm a little bit, a little underwhelmed by what our federal government is up to. But that is the nature of the beast. Take it as we get it. Kind of a not fantastic series of interviews. And for some reason, we had Dan Bongino just promise to do a bunch more of them. So I guess that wasn't enough. Go ahead and bring on our first caller who's on the line. It's weird because I can't actually say the phone number right away. Who do I have on the line here with me?
Stevie Wonder is back.
There he is. How you doing, my friend?
Well, I wanted to bring some history and some current events together.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
As I told you before, I was a CT in the Navy, and a cryptologic technician, radio intercept work. And Memorial Day, one of the things that these people, we don't get recognized for, we were the most highest casualties of unarmed warriors in the U.S. service. Going back to 1969, one of our planes, an EC-121, was shot down, 31 killed, 9 CTs aboard, and that was North Korea.
Okay.
I went in the Navy in 68. On January the 23rd of 68, the USS Pueblo was captured by the North Koreans.
Sure.
83 people captured. I don't know the number of CTs, but, I'd say a good third of the ship's complement was CTs.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 83 captured, 1 died. And, of course, the Pueblo is still a commissioned U.S. Navy ship, still at the dock in North Korea. A tourist attraction.
Yeah, they still do propaganda tours there.
Yep.
Have you ever seen the Vice Guide to Travel? North Korea?
No.
When you get a chance, jot it down on your notepad, if such a thing is on your desk. It's called the Vice, V-I-C-E, Vice Guide to Travel, North Korea. Not only do they cover the Pueblo, but it is one of the weirdest, wackiest, behind, illegal tour of North Korea done with cameras that weren't supposed to be filming. Done by the guys at Vice magazine back when they actually had a pair. And before they were doing Tranny Madness or whatever. Worth everybody's time to watch. It is truly nuts. And the Pueblo is prominently featured as the propaganda sort of example. So you might find it fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Last but not least, and the earliest event that happened was in June the 8th of 1967.
Mm-hmm.
That was the USS Liberty, another intel ship, and that was the most egregious of all of them. 25 killed. That ship was bombed, strafed, torpedoed, and, basically those 3 by Israeli aircraft.
Right.
They did their best to sink her, and that was all. If you look up the USS Liberty, there's a group out there, there's a documentary about it, and what's fascinating about it, and I believe this to all be true, okay, we almost went to nuclear war. And basically, the Israelis were allowed to attack the Pueblo. The Pueblo was put out there for them to attack. They were over on the east coast of Africa and were ordered to steam at flank speed over to the Suez Canal there. And basically, the reason they went after them is we know that the Israelis started that war because they basically took out the entire Egyptian Air Force in the first 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, one of the other things that came out of that was that the Israelis, when they crossed the canal into Egypt, actually, and this was my specialty, was surface-to-air missiles.
Okay.
They actually captured a surface-to-air missile site, and the control vans were too big to be carried by a helicopter. They got one of the control vans and cut it in half and took it back across the canal by helicopter in pieces. And there was so much intelligence that was gained there that helped us in the fight against the North Vietnamese, the surface-to-air missiles in North Vietnam. You know, the Israelis were there for us, okay? And then, come to find out today, was listening to the radio coming home from getting pet food.
Yep.
And I swear to God, my cat and dog eat better than I do. But the Israelis that now have the most advanced laser weapon in the world, and they will be turning it over to us.
You're talking about today?
They got, Iron Sword and Iron Sting. They've used both of these weapons. They're being deployed right now in Israel, and they have shot down many missiles with these laser weapons.
How long do they have to?
They're better than Iron Dome.
Yeah. How long do they have to be, on target with aim before they're functional? I assume they move it. No idea.
I have no idea. They show the one place I found an article about it. They showed one mounted on a Jeep.
Oh, really?
And I mean, I would assume the targeting's like instant. It's like looking through the scope on a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, they're using them to shoot down drones, among other things. So used them for short range missiles and some of the longer range ones. They don't, they've only got I think they said 10, 12 kilometer range.
Okay.
So that's about 6 miles.
Yeah.
So, but still, I mean, just the fact they've got it and it's operational and it is cheap to produce.
Than sending conventional missiles or anything. Than sending any kind of conventional missiles or things like that.
Yeah, well, like I say, they've got them deployed on Jeeps. I mean,
that's crazy.
You talk about a field deployable weapon. That is really wild.
So they've got lasers. They've got some of these things out in New Mexico at White Sands. Have you ever seen those? The space out there? You can drive past the site. They actually have it labeled.
Yeah, no, I've not. No, I've been watching lasers since high school when they first got invented.
Check out Hellstaff when you get a chance. It's called HELSTF, Hellstaff. And it is it's a high energy laser system that's out at White Sands. They've got a whole, section of the base and they fire it up and it's an invisible laser. It's non-visible, but they burn the atmosphere and melt stuff on the back of the mountains that are miles and miles away and whatnot. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. And of course the thing, the problem they're having with the long range lasers is, burning through the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And, they build up a cloud in front of the beam and disperse it.
Yep.
And so the whole thing is that, the whole thing is it takes a nuclear reactor to power those. Okay. I mean, you see them on Navy ships. They've got these electromagnetic weapons and then the laser weapons.
Yep.
And, a lot of them are on nuclear powered stuff. So
that makes sense.
A lot of power. Yep. So the other thing was, I went to my 60th high school reunion last weekend.
That's right. Okay.
And it's kind of a good news, bad news thing. The bad news is 8 of my classmates have died in the last 4 years. Okay. And I will tell you something. I honestly believe probably half of them at least were COVID related.
Sure.
Okay. And or vaccine injury related.
Yep.
And the thing is, I took a bottle of my extreme altitude Malbec down. I wanted to raise a toast to my classmates with this life enhancing wine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm ashamed of my classmates. I was not allowed to toast. I was not allowed to, took this thing out of my wine cooler, put it in a portable wine cooler plugged into the back of my SUV.
Yeah.
And, keeping it chilled like I'm supposed to. I mean, this is a cherished item.
Yeah.
And, it's something I wanted to share with my classmates and was not allowed to do so.
What was the reasoning?
And so, well, the first thing was that they said, basically, the way I presented it was they thought I was promoting somebody. Okay. Because I'm a member of a wine club.
Okay.
And then so they thought I was promoting the wine club. And I said, no, that's not the deal at all. But then I said, can I do a taste? And, I can, all I'm talking about is the wine. Anything above 6,000 feet is considered to be extreme altitude.
Sure.
And I found one Malbec that's a blend that actually part of the blend is from grapes that grow at 10,300 feet.
Whoa.
And I found out those are still not the highest vineyards in the world. The highest vineyards in the world are actually in Nepal.
That makes sense.
So go figure.
Yeah.
The Buddhists.
Yeah, I can believe that. Seems like it'd be a little chilly,
anyway,
though. That seems a little chilly.
Oh, yeah. Well, the whole thing is, that altitude, low oxygen, and, the thing they're known for up there in the Calchaquí Valley in Argentina is they're known for their longevity. 80-year-old women. And, for a person there in the village to go to a doctor is a day's trip.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easier to tough it out when you've got a problem than it is to try to get to a doctor. And these people still live long lives up in that area.
Sure.
So I'm just fascinated by human spirit, and so like I say, I'm ashamed. And the other bad thing that happened on the trip was I went to see my chemistry teacher in high school.
Okay.
He's got to be in his 90s now.
Yeah.
And he was at the 2021 reunion, our 55th reunion, which was delayed a year because of COVID. And in 2021, we had it. He was there with his soon-to-be wife. And I was hoping he was going to be at this reunion. Well, he was not, because both he and his wife are they're fully vaccinated. And I'm saying, for God's sakes, let me put you in touch with the people I'm with. You don't need to be going through this. You don't have to die from this crap.
Yeah.
It is fixable. And just to give you an idea of how far I've gone, I've really gone off the deep end here. I just ordered
I love it.
$2,000 of testing.
Okay.
One is $1,000 gene testing, which I'm going to be looking for damaged genes in my body from the spike protein.
Yep.
Damaged RNA and DNA should be detectable on this gene scan. It's really supposed to be a comprehensive gene scan of the human genome. And then the other one was a bank of tests that anybody can order through somebody called Merrick.
Mm-hmm.
And Merrick, M-A-R-E-K, is basically it is a way for you to order tests for yourself, not having to get a doctor prescribe the test or anything else.
I got it.
Basically, they've got packages, and I ordered the package with a couple of add-ons. I'm getting my lipids tested, my thyroid.
Yep.
Okay, I think my thyroid's beginning to be hit. I think that's part of, this whole thing to me is AIDS, and this is what Fauci went after in the beginning. That's what he was looking for, a cure for AIDS, and what he's done is he's actually created an agent that creates AIDS. It destroys our immune systems. So.
Yeah, it does seem like the exact. It seems like the exact example that you would, whenever you learn about what autoimmune disorders look like, it's because your body's attacking itself, and like, what a better way to do that than have your body create something that it looks at as foreign, and then also looks at itself as being the thing that created it. Like the reflexive loop there makes it sounds insane to me.
Well, the wild thing is the spike protein. I come to find out, its major pathways of entry, the ACE2 receptors, and then there's also the nicotins receptors. Okay. And basically, those are most prevalent, and I found this fascinating, in the endothelium of your blood vessels and the epithelium of the blood vessels in your lungs.
Perfect.
So the outer coating of the blood vessels in the lungs, is where they attack, and the inner coating of your blood vessels, the inner lining of your blood vessels is what they attack. And then since they can penetrate the blood-brain barrier, they get into your brain and they get inside monocytes. And monocytes are part of the immune system. And the monocytes, start spitting out spike protein because, once they invade a cell, they start replicating the spike protein. Well, the monocytes run up against the immune deficiency or the immune system, and they look at them and say, "Oh, we know who you are." And so we're not going to attack you. And so, it is truly a bioweapon. I mean, it is truly a bioweapon, the spike protein. And so, it's like I say, the deeper I get into it, and basically where I'm at this point is, I'm so tired of, I've now been with Leading Edge Clinic now for 10 months. And, I will say that I've slowed down things. But what I'm finding a hard time dealing with is there's no markers. There's no goals. There's no targets. There's no, and so that's why I'm ordering all these tests.
Yeah.
I just, I want to get all the information I can get, find out what's out of whack, and, and give it to, I'm moving up to the partner nurse practitioner at Leading Edge Clinic, Scott Marsdale. And, these people are bleeding edge with the off-label supplements and off-label use of drugs and supplements, natural drugs. And the whole thing is that, Scott is right up there, man. And, I'm going to be throwing all this in his lap July the 1st. Okay.
Yeah.
So the nurse practitioner I was with out in Kansas is retiring in July.
Okay.
So I just decided to go ahead and make the move. And I decided to spend the money because, getting the 60% disabled from the VA. And I do have one other thing to say that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of off the wall.
Okay.
But do you happen to know Ashley Babbitt's history as far as her service is concerned?
I don't know.
Okay, well, here's the deal.
Okay, send it.
I looked and see in the initial articles that came about them, they said she was in the Air Force 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and looked her up and found out she had gotten out of the Air Force as an E5. And they're saying, well, for God's sakes, this is not much of a mover. 14 years in a service and to make E5.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it was only 4 years in the Air Force and then 10 years in the Air National Guard.
Got it.
One of her duty stations was the D.C. Air National Guard. And they're called the Capitol Guardians.
Yep.
And one of their duties is riot control. And what she was doing with them was doing roster assignments. Okay. So that's what she was doing with them as a unit. So when you get in there and you see these people saying, what in the hell was she doing jumping through the window? My personal belief is she was jumping through the window to sit there on the other side and stop people from coming in, because there's videos of her screaming at the Capitol Police that were there in front of those glass doors. Scream for help, get help. And she actually slugged the guy that got 7 years, the guy that actually broke the window that she went through. She actually slugged him and knocked his glasses off before he did that. So, she was not one of the attackers. And I don't care how these people paint it, if anybody bothers to look at the, at the videos, it's all there. Okay. And it's the guy that shot her. I'm sorry, but the police in Louisville police shot and killed a guy that was the boyfriend of a woman, and he was in her apartment, and he was a drug dealer. And he shot first, and they retired and fired and killed him, and they ended up paying $1 million payment to him. And, of course, the latest news supposedly is Ashley Babbitt's estate has now been offered $5 million.
Yeah, I think it's more than that, actually.
And so do I.
Well, what I'm saying is, we had some people tell us that that the lawsuit was asking for $30 million, and the $5 million number was actually floated to people as a way to bargain down. So it was a bargaining tactic to leak a fake number that was lower than what they were expecting.
Yeah.
And so that's what that's what I was told. And so in which case that's bad information, but that means that the people in the DOJ are trying to lower the number by giving a bad number. And on top of that, I 100% agree with you as far as Michael Byrd and the guy who took the shot. Zero chance that you could evaluate that and come away with it being a good shoot under at least DOJ, which would be FBI, U.S. Marshals, DEA, ATF. That would not be a good shoot under under any of the other sort of like restrictions we have. She didn't pose an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury at that moment. She could have developed into that, right? You could always have a non-deadly force scenario that becomes a deadly force scenario in the future, but that was not what I saw in front of me. And I had a dozen federal agents look at it, including a guy who used to be on the inspection team for shootings. He was one of the shooting inspectors, and he said, "There's no way." He's like, "I couldn't rule that a good shoot. Doesn't make sense."
Yeah. Well, there's another one that's just come out. this fat Metro Police Department guy that shot a guy point blank with a rubber grenade.
Okay.
And he broke his leg with it.
Was this a
guy,
J6 thing, or this was some other time?
That was J6 thing.
Yeah.
And the guy was outside the fence. He never, this is where the barrier was.
Yep.
And where they were, pushing up against the fencing. And the whole thing is that basically, this guy, point blank, shot it at the guy. He shot him in the leg, broke his femur.
Mm-hmm.
And, he spent a year in, going through surgeries to get that fixed. And, he's another one that, as far as I'm concerned, he should be in prison. So, that to me is, to me, the J6 was an incited riot. The mob did not storm the steps until they were fired on. And I think most of the firing came from the Metropolitan Police Department. And I've mentioned that to you before.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both know they're a different breed up there.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Metro PD.
To me, I've always been. Huh?
I'm not a big fan of Metro PD in D.C.
Yeah. The Capitol Police were, always in all the other national protests I went to, they were always very laid back and just kind of let things roll,
Yeah, they're not super competent either, though. In my experience, Capitol Police is like a glorified security guard, having worked.
Sure.
Nobody ever really wanted to work, but that's what their job is. They're more likely to tell you where the bathroom is than have to engage anybody in a protest or anything else because they just don't do it. But yeah, well, that's all. That's interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that settlement, and it's a good reminder that it's going on. But I did not know the story about Ashley Babbitt, at least her time in the military and the Guard. We just had. Did you? In fact, we're gonna have an interview coming up. I'm doing one tomorrow with Steve Baker. Have you followed any of Steve Baker's stuff?
No.
Put him on your list. He'll be on our Sunday interview. And Steve Baker works with Blaze, but he was an independent journalist on the day of. He's the one who actually caught the video footage or recorded the video footage of Ashley Babbitt being worked on after she was shot. And so he was still in the building walking around with his camera. And he eventually was hired on by Blaze. So he works for Glenn Beck's organization now. And he does reporting for them. But couple of weird things that he found. Number one, go ahead.
He had a cell phone or video camera?
Yeah, he had a video camera in the form of a phone that was set up for receiving audio and video. He was doing like a microphone kind of walk through the area and was documenting the space. He had a blog at the time that he was documenting everything with. And pretty interesting.
Well, I was out at Mount Vernon the day after, January 6th.
Yep.
And the first thing was the statues of George Washington and his wife and his two nephews or nieces were all masked.
Oh, weird.
And when you went in, they made you wear masks. Okay. And the security guards there spent a lot of time trying to get me to pull mine up over to my nose. I ignored them.
Yep.
You're going to arrest me? I'm sick of this stuff. And that was back in 2006. But when we were wandering around, ran into a guy there that was from New Jersey visiting his girlfriend in Washington, D.C. And they got there after everything had gone down. And so the crowd had already gone into the Capitol building. He decided to go up, and because she had a bad heart, she did not go with him. She was already, getting the tear gas, just being down at the bottom of the stairs.
Yep.
So he went upstairs, and he ended up going up the stairs behind the photojournalist, and he was right behind him when she was shot. Okay? When she was shot. And I said, I couldn't believe it. I've been watching to see if anybody from New Jersey ever got, put in the DC gulag, and I didn't really. I don't think it ever saw him. So that's it for me.
Yes, sir. That's a lot.
Happy Memorial Day.
Indeed. Good historical context. Always nice chatting with you.
You too. Talk to you later.
All right, sir. Have a good night. That's going to open up our phone line here, and that is the one and only Stevie Wonder. You guys, you'll see him out there on the Rumble side of the thing, of the chat. Appreciate that. Interested in all of your opinions. You guys can give me your take on what's been going on this week. You guys can give me your a memorial story if you want to share something in honor of Memorial Day, which happened this Monday. And it's open. It's open discussion, open night, open mic. And I got another caller on the line here. Who am I speaking to?
Hi, Kyle. It's Tracy from Iowa.
I heard some enthusiasm. That had to be Tracy. How you doing, Tracy?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm well. I'm very well.
Good. How far have you gotten in the book?
I've got it skimming, and I am reading like 1 or 2 pages at a time, and then I get distracted with what I do enjoy. I'm a slow reader these days.
It's all good.
My daughters,
it's all good.
My daughters have gone through about 20 books this summer. They're keeping track. I remember when I was that person, when I used to like sit under a tree and just read books in a whole setting. Now I sit down for a few minutes and I forget why I got up. When I get up, I don't even know where I was, and I don't even come back to the same space anymore.
I totally get that. And, when we were young, if you read so many books, you got a free personal pan pizza.
That's right.
Afterwards.
That is exactly correct.
Didn't you love that part? Yep.
Yeah, now they don't have the pizza place or the free pizzas.
So not fair.
It's just, what are these kids growing up? By the way, hold on, let me pass this along.
Yeah.
One of your buddies in the chat wants to know if you peed on something interesting today. I don't know why that's relevant, but I'm just going to... You made an impact.
Today,
you made an impact.
I did try a couple weeks ago. I tried to paint the door jamb of my door, and I went to squat down, and it did not go well again.
Oh no!
And at least I did not spill the paint this time because it was inside. But it's just, yeah, I just don't have the capability of squatting, period, anymore. It's just over.
It's brutal.
So, yes, it is brutal. So, but I did get the painting done. So now I'm trying to get my little porch swing put back together outside, which has been entertaining because I got it apart, but I cannot put it back together.
That is not what you want to be doing. You don't want to be getting things apart and then not back together. That's exactly the opposite of what you want to do with that.
I know, and I thought for sure that I knew what I was doing, and it just doesn't go well. I don't know. But no, I haven't seen anything yet today, or this week. Give me time.
Could happen at any moment, right?
Tomorrow, so you never know what happens. Yeah, it could happen at any time.
Every day is an adventure.
I was going to call to Yes, it is. I was going to call to entertain everybody. Was again one of my stories from patrol work, and I figured you would enjoy this one.
It's all yours.
So I got a call one night from another county, and the deputy just basically said, I have something weird going on here. This family was called by someone they don't know, and they were told to dress only in cotton, drive the red car, don't bring any identification, and expect to have to stay for a long period of time, and here are the directions. And of course, the directions led to the middle of the county that I was working in. So I took the directions down and I headed to that location because I have no understanding what is going on.
Yeah.
So I get there and I go into the house and everybody's in this back bedroom. And so I walk into this bedroom and there's the couple that own the house. They're standing there and there's a woman laying on the bed with her 2 children and she's got them kind of around the neck with her arms. So she looked at me when I walked in and I was like, oh my. And she's like, thank you for coming. All right.
What?
We're on a good start here. I don't know. And so she tells me that we're expecting more people, but, and I was expecting another deputy and I had an ambulance coming because something was not right going on in this house. And so when the other deputy got there, she was like, I asked her if she would come with us because she didn't live in the house. Apparently, according to the people that owned the house, she walked in there with her children one day and just announced that God had prepared this place for her to stay for the next 1,023 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She walked into the bedroom and laid down. And I'm just like, what in the world is going on? They didn't know who she was.
Well, who were the people that got
they would call 911. Yeah.
Who were the people that got the other message?
Her family. She was calling them to come join her in this other house.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And so the other deputies come and she agrees to go with me but she needs to pray first. And I was like, all right, light it up. Let's go. And so she opens her Bible and turns to Revelations.
Oh, yeah.
And she starts reading a passage. Yeah, exactly. And so she starts reading a passage and she finishes and she looks at me and she says, do you understand? I have no clue. But I'm like, okay, let me try and paraphrase here. Are you the person with the 12 stars around your head? And she's like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, excellent. We're going forward here. So she was pretty convinced that her son was the second coming and that the devil serpent that was present during the birth didn't eat him because she didn't look at him. Like, rock on.
Perfect.
And so finally she finishes her passage and she tells us that we have to pray with her. And I was like, okay, let's pray. And she's like, well, you all have to hold hands. I'm like, oh, for the love of God. Okay. So she closes her eyes and I get my handcuffs out and I'm like, are we handcuffing her or are we going to try and go with her being cooperative? Because somehow my ambulance got canceled. And so nobody would say anything. So I kind of put the handcuffs back and because she was being cooperative. And so we were getting her out to the car and she didn't have any shoes on and it was a rocky driveway. And I said, do you have shoes? Do you need your shoes? And she looked at me and she's like, no, every step just reminds me I'm on God's path. Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
I hope your feet don't hurt too much. And then she gets in the car willingly and all is good. And we get the kids in there as well because the kids didn't belong in the house either. And then she's like, well, we have to bring the dog. There was a dog running around the house. She dog napped the dog from another jurisdiction. So we've got another city involved, 2 counties, and the dog she dog napped from another jurisdiction.
Yes.
Like, why do we have to take the dog? I thought the dog belonged at the house. It did not belong at the house. So we get her back to the office, and I have to do my paperwork to put her in a hospital for a short stay. And we're trying to find the grandmother to the kids. And so I have to go wake up a judge 2:30 in the morning. And, the judge was kind of cute and he came out in his bathrobe. So I didn't mind that so much, but he looked at my affidavit.
Oh, wait, what? The judge was kind of cute and he was in a bathrobe. So we're good.
Well, it's 2:30 in the morning. Yeah.
I mean, I get that he might be in a bathrobe. Okay.
So he looks at my affidavit and he reads one line, thinks she's the Virgin Mary. Okay, that's good enough for me. Signs it. We are on our way. And so she goes off to a hospital. We find the grandparents to take the kids. And then I have to try and figure out who the dog belongs to. So I have to call this other jurisdiction and they had to look up this dog through records of some sort. It's just like, what are we supposed to do with this dog? And so she was like, the owner was like, oh, I was wondering where my dog went. You think? So she was going to come down the next day to pick it up from somewhere. I'm not really sure where we left it. But then we found out after the fact that she went to the hospital for her 96-hour stay.
Yeah.
She got out. She took a cab to her mother's house where we sent the 2 kids.
Okay.
And she grabbed the kids. She left in the cab and she went to Fort Leonard Wood. And right at this, because the county I worked in was right at the South Gate. And so she demanded to speak to the CID people at Fort Leonard Wood.
Yes.
I wanted to tell them a story as well. And I had actually no idea what ultimately happened to this woman because they sent her to a women's shelter north of the base.
Yep.
And that's the last I heard of her. I had no idea what the resolution of this thing was.
You're just leaving everybody in the lurch. Nobody knows what happened. What year was this?
No. Probably 2013. 2012, 2013, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
So very entertaining evening.
Yeah, people have no idea. Like
all
just
over our walls and stuff.
Yeah, just because you're not in some big jurisdiction, just because you're not in a big city, does not mean that they're.
Yep.
What did your report say? That's what I want to know. What is the affidavit? How do you write that one up? Because you have to be kind of, you got to be kind of sterile in your language. Your language can't be particularly.
Yes.
Right. You have to sterilize it a little bit, and it's not your feelings and the comedy of it.
Yeah.
Did you work some humor into?
I kind of did. I basically said she indicated to me after reading a passage in Revelation that she was the mother of the second coming of Christ, and she her son was not eaten by the serpent that was present at the birth because she didn't look at him.
Yes.
Therefore, I finished up. Therefore, I think she needs a little recuperation time with some doctors. I have no idea. Something just cracked in her head a little bit, I think, that night. I have no clue.
So I had a guy.
Entertaining stuff that you get to do.
You get to even do some of that stuff when federal prisoners lose their mind. I had a guy, one of my last pieces in New Mexico. And it was our first. It was our first, and maybe my only in New Mexico PC, arrest, as opposed to going out. And we complained to him after the fact, but we arrested him first, which you never do in the federal system. You always go out there with a warrant that's already been sworn out. So this was unusual for us. This guy called, and I actually saved the voicemail because it was one of my favorite voicemails that I've ever heard. And I would play it on the speakers on my computer loudly when people were working for no reason. It's like somebody would walk by. And and so the guy he had a very thick kind of Hispanic accent. And he called his public defender, the federal public defender, on a recorded line and left the following message. He said, "Hello. Yes, this is Ramon Del Campo. Yes, I have made plans to kill federal judges. I've made plans to kill state judges. Call the feds. Call the fucking feds, I say, And then he went on like this thing, and then he was like, started naming judges, right? And what we basically pieced together is that he was a crazy homeless person that wanted to be thrown back into prison because he didn't want to be let out because he didn't have anywhere to go. But he told us a story about why he was in jail in the first place. And it was that he was a millionaire, which is always a good start to the story. And he was a millionaire, and he dressed like a millionaire because he wore a certain pair of pants, and he told us how much they cost, and he wore a certain type of belt, and that cost a certain amount of money. And he wore this shirt, and it was very expensive, and so on and so forth. And people thought he was a millionaire as he walked around, and said his story was that while he was at the homeless shelter with his millionaire clothes, whenever he went into the bathroom, he would notice that there were women, very wealthy women from highborn families, were up in the attic, and they were looking through the ceiling tiles, watching him urinate. And so then they wanted to see more. And so he would put on a show of self-pleasure. So he did that. And then then he realized that they were actually also in the park. So he would go to the park where there was a workout thing, and he would do he told me he did 1,000 pull-ups. He did 1,000 pull-ups, and then he laid back on the steps of the courthouse, and women would come up. And so the only way that the women would watch him is if he blindfolded himself. So he would blindfold himself, and then he would do his business, self-pleasuring on the steps of the courthouse at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And he told us we could definitely prove that this was true because we would see all the women if we would check the security cams, and he would peek and see them. And, mental illness is a real strange animal, but it is highly entertaining if you're
It really can be.
Right? If it's not threatening you.
And, and I was obviously in Missouri, so there was a lot of meth and a lot of people on meth binges. And you kind of knew about the 5th day of them being awake on a meth binge. You would get the call for the tree people or the people in the attic all the time. And you would run over there. It's like, seriously, there's people in the tree, and there was nobody ever in a tree.
I had a buddy explain to me why so many people were on meth in Albuquerque, and he was a pretty sarcastic guy. He worked on an ambulance crew, and he said something to the effect of, I was like, why was Breaking Bad about Albuquerque? And he goes, well, there's a big meth problem here. And I go, yeah, but why? And he goes, can you imagine another city that you wouldn't want to be, like, wouldn't you want to be awake for 6 days in a row here in Albuquerque? Like, what? Imagine what you would miss if you went to sleep. And I went like, oh my God. I don't think I missed anything. But yeah, he's exactly right. That's how it works.
Yep.
It's
I
pretty
worked
chaotic.
with one I worked with one inmate who was a meth addict, and she told me she used to have complete conversations and she would record them on her phone because an alien flew in through her bathroom window, and as long as she was in the tub, the alien would come and fly in her bathroom window and she would have conversations with it.
Sure.
And of course, when she got sober, suddenly there's like 30, 45 minutes of video of her just chit-chatting with nobody.
Right. Yeah, the video is not good.
Entertaining stuff.
I used to watch people have very dramatic and long-form conversations when I used to work psych ward as a medic. And so you'd watch these people sitting in there and they'd be chatting. As long as they didn't throw the food, as long as they didn't try to smash themselves against the wall. And everybody thinks that like the walls are padded. The walls we had were like hardened. They weren't drywall. They were like corian.
Plasticky.
Yeah, plasticky.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to wipe off the feces or the blood or whatever else people do crazy in there.
Yes. Yeah. And they always get naked in that cell. Why? They always take off all their clothes. I don't get it.
We had a guy that worked in the hospital with me who was sometimes you meet people and you're just like, that was a strange person to have come into my life for a short period of time. His name was Dave. I don't know what his last name was. Dave, so you know who Chuck Norris is, right?
Yeah.
Picture Chuck Norris, but Chuck Norris is little. He's like Bruce Lee size. So Chuck Norris is like 5'6", 5'5". Dave was like 6'3", 240, and he looked like Chuck Norris. He looked like the way Chuck Norris should look, right?
Should look, yes.
Yeah. And Dave was probably in his early 50s, so he had salt and pepper beard, and it was pretty well kept, but it was a Chuck Norris looking beard, and he had a Chuck Norris looking hair. And Dave would wear like that commando sweater. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's that kind of like the British special operations sweater. They gave him one of those to wear in the hospital as a hospital security guy, and he made like $11 or $12 an hour. Okay. And so Dave was an interesting dude, and we would talk, and he would tell me about guns, and we would tell me about interesting little snippets of his life, and he was really into cars, and he'd go to car shows on the weekends. And so I was like, oh, well, like, what do you do? And he's like, I usually show my car. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, what do you have? And he was like, I have a like a late 90s Lamborghini that's a limited edition.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, is it pretty expensive? And he's like, oh yeah. I go, like, not to be nosy, but like, how expensive are we talking? And he's like, in the 300s.
Yeah.
I was like, you have a $300,000 car and you make $11 or $12 an hour? And he was like, oh yeah, brother. Oh, like, yeah, like I just work here because I was getting fat. I just needed a job so I would go out of the house. And I go, what? And he goes, yeah, no, I was doing contracting for the State Department for about like 10 years. And when I came back to the United States, I just didn't have a job for a little while. So he's like, I was drinking this is his actual words, a combat jug of wine every night with a whole pizza. And I was like, what's a combat jug of wine, dude? And he's like, like those big, like 1 gallon jugs. He's not like our friend Stevie Wonder. He would drink a gallon of wine and a full pizza every night. And I'm like, dude, how are you built like that? And he was like, well, he's like, I'm a bodybuilder. I used to be a competitor in bodybuilding. So was my wife. And I'm like, that's cool, I guess. And he was like, yeah. I go, I said, what got her into that? And he's like, it's hard to say. I go, why is it hard to say? He's like, well, I don't speak Russian, and she doesn't speak English. So we sort of like don't speak that much. So it turns out after like months of knowing Dave and getting like these weird little snippets, we used to call him social security because he was the security guard, but he was like a social worker because he was super calm. He was really mellow. I found out the following things about Dave. Maybe one day Dave will hear this and he'll be like, oh yeah, I know that guy. Dave owned a Lamborghini, and he would go to car shows, but his beater car was a Porsche Boxster, and his wife had a matching Porsche Boxster, and the two of them, she was a former Miss Russia and then a bodybuilder.
Oh my gosh.
And he was like a Mr. Olympia competitor. Okay. He was prior Army. Then he went and made a bunch of money in the State Department. And rather than take his money that he got tax-free overseas, he invested it when he was living in Africa. And he told me that he was like an 85% shareholder in a 165,000 acre chicken farm in one of the African countries. And I can't remember what it was. I was like, what in the shit are you doing here, man? Like, what are you doing? Why do you work here? And he was like, oh, I'm just in between contracts. And I just was getting fat. I was drinking Combat jugs of wine and pizza after my workouts. And I didn't want to get fat. So now I come hang out with crazy people and you. And I was like, that's cool. And I remember one of the doctors kind of saying something disparaging about about Dave. Yeah. And I said, I bet Dave has a lot more money than you. And he probably could buy your whole estate and pay off your student loans. And the guy was like, probably. Why do you say that? And I'm like, because on the weekends, he drives a Lambo. And it's like a vintage, whatever the hell it was. It was like a Countach or something. I don't remember what. And the doctor goes, are you shitting me? And I go, no. So he asked him, he's like, hey, Dave, what do you drive? And he was like, I just drove my Porsche in today. It's just my beater. But I'm a car guy. Like, what are you driving? And he was like, do you have a Lambo? And he was like, oh, yeah, I have a Lambo too. Yeah. That's my show car. So the doctor like walks off and he's like shaking his head going like, son of a bitch. Like I went to medical school for like 16 years and this dude, this random Chuck Norris looking guy owns a Lambo, married a former Miss Russia. And then one day Dave just didn't show up for work and we're like, what happened? And he got a State Department contract and he went back overseas and I never saw him again.
Well, there you go.
You got to love people like that.
Next time I'm going to tell you about all the super secret squirrel people I had.
I like them. Yeah, it's my favorite. My favorite is...
They all got picked up in Blackhawks.
You know, I could do without that stuff in our life. Every time you start thinking it's okay, then you realize that those guys are still doing that, huh?
Yep, absolutely. So, hey, a couple more things I wanted to tell you.
Fire it off.
The guy that is going to run against Joni Ernst will be announcing on June 12th.
Okay.
So I'll get the press release a little earlier and I'll send it to you. And I have a town hall tomorrow morning. Miss Joni Ernst seems to be in the state since, Congress isn't working at all this month, but she's doing a town hall at freaking 7:30 in the morning and I'm going to go and I'm going to mention Garrett to her.
Yeah.
And we'll try to record her response and see if she has any response to that. But I have another question, so it's not exactly going to be my whole question. I'm just going to mention that he's honing in on 1,000 days of being suspended, and it's time to,
he most certainly is.
Use a shit or get off the pot, So I'm going to do that tomorrow morning. So I will post whatever response I get from her, hopefully tomorrow afternoon.
I love it. Yeah, definitely do that. And thanks for thinking of our friend out there and also, holding these people to account. Someone's got to go to it. I assume she's doing it at 7:30 because she hopes people won't be there.
I'm definitely sure that's why she's doing it at 7:30. I'm going to have to leave at 6:30 because it's like 30 minutes away, but that's all right. I'm going to do it and I've notified a couple other people that they should be there as well. So hopefully we'll get a couple chances to ask questions, but
you'll probably have the whole thing. Yeah, it'll probably just be you to yourself. It'll be you and like 3 reporters. So
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I will go to town then, because I will go off on more than 1 or 2 things. So
good.
But
very
pleasure to speak with you again. And I might be out of pocket for the next couple weeks, but I'm flying back home to Buffalo for a week in June to see parents or see my mom and family. So I will be back toward the end of June.
Okay, I'll look forward to an update on what sort of feeling hurting you've done, unless you post it well, in which case if you post it and I take a look, make sure you tag me on the post too so I can see it. But
I definitely will. Yeah, definitely will.
Let's hurt some congressional feelings.
All right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yes, I'm hoping I do. You have a great night.
Do
we'll
the
talk
same.
to you soon.
All right, go get them, Tracy. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. For those of you in the chat asking, that's Tracy. Tracy has outstanding stories, tons of enthusiasm, and sometimes interesting. I'll just leave that. I'll leave that to the folks that know. But she's got lots of spunk and moxie for sure. All right, that leaves the phone line open here. I'll let you guys know. Some of you guys have been sending me some very nice letters. I'm going to show you the PO box there, and also a creative project, which I have to tell. So Rose and I were texting a little bit earlier. We were on a DM. Our chat moderator and our IRL tour guidance person, Rose Lopez, who you guys will see over in both the chats probably, sent me a handmade Kyle Seraphin show Sunday sit down light box. I'm going to call it a light box. Rose, you tell me if that's a good name for it. And even though it said Fragile very clearly written on the box, the UPS handlers or whatever service were not treating it as Fragile. And so they beat the hell out of this box, and it disrupted the function, Rose. So I'm going to rehabilitate it, and we're going to put it up soon. So it may not be up tomorrow or for this Sundays, but it will be up in the very near future for sure. And you'll probably see it behind me. Very thoughtful. Also a couple of really nice letters from you all. I appreciate them. If you want me to share your letter on the call-in program, by all means, let me know somewhere in a letter. If you want to just send us something in writing, because you're an old-fashioned type, and I appreciate it. It's amusing as hell to me. Send it to 9073 West State Highway 29, and it's Suite 110, Box 509, Liberty Hill, Texas, 78642. The ladies who work at the UPS store now know me by sight. They know my box number by sight, and they know when I have packages, and they call it out as I walk in the door. So that is very charming and amusing. And the running joke continues to be that one day somebody will break the rule and send some kind of a live animal, which they're horrified about the idea. So do not send any live animals. That's the rule. No live animals, please. But by all means, send us postcards. Send us a little letter if you'd like. And if you want to coordinate in our Rumble chat to do the Kyle Seraphin Show IRL tour, Rose Lopez may drop in on you. And now you know. What else did I get? The treatise on barbecue was listed as not a treatise, but I'm not changing my description of it. I'm going to refer to it as a treatise still. And I see you over there. Is it Donnie girl? Dawn, DAWNI girl with a $20. I think they call them super chats over on YouTube, and they call them Rumble rants on Rumble. And I wish everybody would just get it all together there. Terrible with the social media thing, but thank you, Donnie girl. Appreciate it. And it sounds like it's probably a lot earlier for you. It's much later out here. Donnie, if you tell us what island you're on, if you're alohaing me, I assume that you're either in Hawaii or you're just from Hawaii, but let us know on that. Okay, so that means the call line is open. I want to hear what you guys have to say. You guys got to see kind of I don't know. I feel like we brought some information to front today. I'm a little concerned about finding out that our FBI director was not saying things true under oath. That seems problematic. Guys, let me know what you think of that. Do we need to have a fully honest swearing in hearing or confirmation hearing? Because this seems like it's important, but maybe I'm just I have a different expectation. I did have something out here I was going to play you guys. The question came up earlier on some social media lines. Do we know for a fact that Kash Patel actually showed up on all of the Stu Peters shows, like 8 of them? And you guys aren't going to be shocked, but I went out and pulled them all, and I ripped them all off the internet, and I now have them in a file. So yeah, he did show up. And I confirmed they were all different appearances because he's wearing different clothing each time with different topics, similar names of the shows. It wasn't for the last couple of years, but he definitely was on those shows. So I don't know. It seems to check out on that. We got people spamming our chat. That's pretty fun. All right, phone line is open. If it's amenable to you guys, because we had a little issue with Locals. Locals was not working today. But if you guys want to get access to the phone number, in general, what you do is you sign up for our Locals channel. Here, I can put it on the screen here. It's there it is. You can it's kyleseraphin.com will take you to Locals. You could also sign up over on YouTube if you want to be a member over there, and the phone number is listed. So it's youtube.com/@kyleseraphin. You can become a member over on X as well, or you can subscribe on X. They have a different name everywhere. It's like $1.99 a month, I think, on X. It just gives you access to this if you want to be part of the call-in show. If you don't, no big deal. I don't need people to subscribe on X. It's just a thing that they made it an option, and so we clicked yes, and then it was like, well, We better give something for $2 a month. Some people hold individual subscriber spaces. I'd rather have it be interactive on the phone line. It is what it is. What was I going to tell you guys? A couple other things here. Oh, we were having an issue with locals. Locals would not boot up. I couldn't pull the stream keys for it. And so if it's open to the chat, I'm going to leave here. Put the chat back up on the screen here. You guys tell me if this makes sense to you. But I was thinking we'll just put the phone number out in both of the chats because it's the last day of the month. And we'll be switching to a new phone number for our subscribers next month. But we could open it up to anybody else that wants to call in during this kind of second hour. And we'll do it for a little bit further. Do another 20, 30 minutes. Take another couple calls if some people want to. You guys got any beef with that? If anybody has a problem with it, speak up, but the line is open. I think we're going to just punch it out there to YouTube. Anybody here? So stand by, folks. I'll put it into the chat there. That way you guys can see it. I'll just read it to you as well. It's 737. Yeah, no complaints. 737-370-9199. If you are so inclined in the chat, Rose, I'll let you go ahead and do your thing over there. We'll put it over here on Rumble as well. So there you go. You guys are seeing it on the phone. If you guys choose and you want to call in and hang out, then by all means, let's do it. Phone lines open. We've got another caller on the line. 370. Who am I talking to? Hello, hello.
Hi, Kyle. It's Joe, Trucker Joe here.
How we doing, Trucker Joe?
Oh, so how am I doing? Well, not good. Lots of problems in my life, but I didn't call in.
Okay.
But I wanted to talk about things. Let's see if I can work in a couple of topics. And but I have some thoughts about the state of the world, and I used to have a neighbor who has moved away, and then but he's an elderly Freemason.
Okay.
And he was really good at taking care of everybody, and I remember him telling me to remember that most of the people in the world, and it always stuck with, it always left it because that's one of the hallmarks of Freemasonry, that there's this optimistic view of humanity, as if all humanity was inherently good. And there's a denial of original sin. And I think of all the sources of evil in the world, all the people that participate in evil. We can't even have grow our own food and own our own chickens without being persecuted. We got mandatory vaccines. We got so much corruption from big pharma at every level.
Yep.
The laws are legislated to be evil, especially in regard to marriage, and rewarding women for breaking marital contracts and exploiting the men in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I was thinking about how quickly that, Dan and Cash caved after they got the positions, and broke their promises. And it seems like the deep state is much alive and well still.
Oh yeah.
And
I think that's, I'm not sure that they caved, to be fair. And I'm trying to be trying to be as fair as humanly possible. And I don't think I've made the allegation that I think these guys were corrupted or someone got to them or any of that, because that's all I'm seeing is I'm seeing people say words previously, and now they're saying words that disagree with themselves. So I'm more than happy to just kind of, the evidence is the evidence. People can believe that it means whatever they think. I wouldn't try to push that on them. But I don't think that we're looking at people that got corrupted per se. I think that the more likely than not, you're looking at men who are in over their heads, who have exceeded their limitations when it comes to the capabilities of what they said they could do and what they can actually do. That's my guess. That seems that, and I think that's the most charitable, position to hold right now.
Yeah, it's the most charitable position, but also the most implausible.
Possibly.
And it may not be a financial corruption. It just may be a death threats that they're dealing with. Maybe they don't want to experience the Clinton type self-deletion. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, in the absence of evidence, which I have no evidence that they're catching those types of threats or anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm more, like I said, I'm more willing to be charitable and just assume that the most, the only thing that I can say is that they're not accomplishing what they said they would accomplish. And
yes.
If they haven't accomplished it, then I'm not going to attribute malice to it. That doesn't seem like the right answer, at least not from my end of it, because that would be a pretty fast turn. So the only other possibilities are, inability, poor self-assessment, things like that, poor, underestimating what the opponent looked like. And you just pointed out yourself, there is a live and well, whether we call it a deep state or administrative state or just a sort of permanent Washington, it's real. It's there. Some of us have worked in it. And when you see it, it just means people think that they know the answer and they don't answer to anybody else because they're going to be there long after all the transient executives and partisan politics change. And they don't feel like they're beholden to anybody else's, anybody else's requirements. They don't have to listen.
Yeah, I wonder how much Trump is involved, how much say Trump has with all this. How much is it that Trump is complicit with the retention of the Epstein information and so on?
How aware of it do you think that he is? What would make sense to you?
Well, he is friends with Glenn Beck and called Glenn Beck quite a bit for advice before running before the campaign and during his campaign trail the second time. And he's just got too many connections not to be aware of it. And there's too many categories in which promises are being broken, in which wrongs are not being righted, for him to be ignorant of all of them collectively.
So the thing that I'm trying to, and I'm trying to see these from other people's perspective, because I've running around and assuming that I know all the answers seems like a bad idea. So possibly, well, I mean, consider the possibility that he may have some awareness of what's going on, because I think he's very busy, and I think there's a lot of demands on his time. I think that seems pretty evident. I mean, if you figure what demands are on your time, doing your job and living your life, my household and my business or what, I just know that my time is always stretched and I don't have anywhere near the number of responsibilities. So I'm going to give him that grace, but then I'm going to also assume that Trump's priorities are the same as Kyle Serafin's priorities or your priorities. That would be a pretty bold assessment, because I don't think he looks out and says the first thing we've got to do is get things right for Garrett O'Boyle. But that's what I think about, and maybe some of our callers do as well.
Though.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing, though. The FBI has been directly weaponized against himself for how long?
Yeah, 8 years. I would agree with you.
And he's had assassination attempts
Yes.
on him
Yep.
and what has really been done to investigate why there's cover-ups regarding those. He's got too much personal vendetta with the DOJ not to be on top of them.
That's our assessment from looking on the outside. I don't know that he feels the same way. I wouldn't put that on him. He might. It would be logical. I think we could say that there's a strong argument that should be the case. But I don't know that it is because I've never talked to the man. I've never asked him, hey, what are your biggest priorities?
Yeah.
What are you most scared of when you go to bed at night? And maybe the answer is he's like, well, I've got Pam Bondi and I got Cash Patel and Dan Bongino involved in it. And Harmeet Dillon's over there and Ed Martin's over there. So like they've got that dog by the leash. And now I'm going to worry about my other stuff. And maybe that's the case. Like, again, we can assess things in a charitable way and not assume that people just are now nefarious and everybody is corrupt, because that's a terrible way to live. I mean, it's the way that I mostly live, to be fair, Joe. Like, I mostly live in a place where I assume everything is nefarious.
Yeah.
It's a good survival tactic, but it's not like a really good thing for happiness.
Right. Yeah. And the thing of it is, I brought up all the stuff I brought up because there's a point that I'm approaching.
Okay.
And I just think that I see nothing but persecution coming for those who are genuinely goodwill and God-fearing, God-loving individuals who actually have a standard.
Yeah, I think that's an astute observation.
Because there's so much evil, and the evil really hasn't been attacked. There's no. I don't see any entity, including the Catholic Church, and us being both Catholics. I don't see any real spiritual warfare or any real executive warfare against the evil that exists within our own country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we may have some reprieve. Maybe we have, I think our decline, I think the acceleration of decline has been decreased for the time being. Because Trump got in as opposed to a Hillary or Kamala.
Sure. Yeah, that they were applying the brake as opposed to doing a reversal or a U-turn.
Yeah, I mean, not even that. Maybe just letting off the gas pedal.
Fair enough. Down to a coast. Okay.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. I think that was always sort of that was the worst case scenario, is that at least we don't have the gas pedal down. And the best case scenario is that we stop and turn around and go the other direction. But that seemed like a unlikely scenario to me. That, again, as a generally cynical person who expects the worst things to happen so I don't get let down.
Yeah. One thing I've learned from interacting with quite a few people, like a huge variety of people from all walks of life, from all over the country, I have learned that people have very little awareness of the metaphysics behind their personal convictions come from. And a lot of them don't understand. Just almost everybody is blind to how certain convictions that relate to one set of metaphysics versus another, they're completely unaware that they're irreconcilable.
Well, I would actually even go a step further than that, and I would say that in my experience with people, including sometimes myself, there's not even a rational or logical chain behind many of the decisions. And I think if we were being honest,
that's exactly what I was going to say too.
I mean, we make this assessment that we're dealing with human beings who are logical and rational creatures, and they're reasonable and logical actors in their own lives. And I think most of what you see in the world is that that's not true. There's a lot of evidence that is a superimposition that we cannot actually justify with our own experiences. And I think it's almost universal. People look around and go, people don't act rationally; they act emotionally. They act on instinct, which may or may not be good calculus. And they don't always act in their own best interests. And they don't even agree with their own previous decisions. A lot of people have strong feelings about something only to do something that would theoretically go against all the principles they had just gone with. You see it all the time. So,
yeah, I wouldn't even call it instinctual. I mean, I think if people actually, if we really take the word instinct more literally, it would probably be better if people were more instinctual, but it's more of just a whim and just a thoughtless reaction that we see. And people don't even know like the history behind reason and logic, how they've been corrupted through the various academic institutions of the West. So,
yeah, maybe we remove the word instinct and we use the word impulsive. It's an impulse.
Yes, it is. It's basically an emotional and oftentimes offended impulse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard for the average person who is working all the time like yourself and myself to really study and read the quality scholarship. And most people are just not even cut out to have the reading comprehension. And that's something I've learned with a lot of the post-planers that like to quote Vatican I, but they don't understand what they're quoting.
Sure.
And so they quote it Vatican I accurately in terms of finding the right passage, but then they make a irrational association to the point they're trying to make and say that it proves their point when it does not in fact prove their point. So people like what it's just like going back to like Catholics, I can hardly find any Catholics that have any understanding of papal infallibility whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, it's I don't know when this watering down happened, but even as a kid, I remember having like youth ministers that were in some sort of a youth group, and it's like they put people out there that didn't have any understanding of what they were teaching and had never read the catechism, and so they couldn't actually articulate tenets of the faith. I think that is maybe that was just the location in the parish that I was in when I was a kid, but I think it's a much more widespread problem, and it goes to the idea that people don't know what they believe. They don't know why they believe it, and they don't even know that they're supposed to, that there's a place where they can actually get those answers, and they have always existed. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about Joe Rogan saying, if only there was I remember him saying this a couple years ago. He said, if only there was like an instruction manual on how we should live our lives, somebody's done the hard work already.
And it was crazy. And what's crazy is that you can't even trust the catechism. You can't even trust the catechism of the Catholic Church, the 80s edition, and all its revisions. If there's a separate book that Ratzinger wrote called The Introduction to the Catechism.
Okay.
Have you ever read that?
I have not. When was that published?
I don't recall. It was probably around the time the catechism came out. But you as a Catholic, if you value the catechism, you must read that introduction by Ratzinger.
Okay.
And it's got the same can cover of the original edition. I have all the editions. So he very clearly states that the Catechism of the Catholic Church is only infallible insofar as to those teachings which have been declared infallible are mentioned.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Okay, so people will read the catechism and say, "Oh, it kind of endorses evolution." It says it's okay that we can believe in it. Well, that's not an infallible statement, nor is it the official teaching of the church. And if we use the rules of faith, which there are several, Holy Scripture to be one of them, the Vicentian canon, which is the consensus of all the early church fathers, is another one. And then we have the magisterium of the ecumenical councils and the Pope's infallible teachings, which are ex cathedra. Now, people don't understand ex cathedra, and people don't understand the councils, nor do they understand the rules of faith, which are supposed to inform each other. So I'm writing out a formula, and I may publish it one day. I may write a book on the rules of faith.
That's your second book that you got pending then too.
Well, yeah, I have lots of ideas.
I know.
I have lots of works that I need to work on, but it's interesting because people don't even understand ex cathedra and the formula behind it. And people don't understand that the church cannot change its teaching at all. So why is it that in the Catechism of the Council of Trent, which is written by, or its publication was supervised and its writing commissioned and supervised by St. Charles Borromeo. The Catechism of the Council of Trent is very clearly creationist. There is absolutely no room to put evolutionary theory and question six-day creation in it.
I'm tracking.
So what I've been doing for years is collecting catechisms by a wide variety of authors spanning a few centuries.
Okay.
And what I'm doing is I'm doing a study to see how, to what degree, what catechisms from what places have a consensus, and to what degree have they erred in those places that they've erred. And so,
what percentage of the catechisms have you compared at this point, you think?
Well, as terms of all the catechisms that have ever been written,
no, against each other, the copies that you have. How far have you gotten into this?
Not very far. I'm like just started.
Yeah. Okay.
But
that sounds like a huge task for whatever it's worth. That sounds like somebody should be on a fellowship and getting paid as a scholar to sit there and pour through texts of several hundred years and line them up and see similarities and where they disagree. That sounds like you need a sponsor to sit and spend time doing that.
Yeah, I do need a scholarship sponsor, but my problem is like I can't get any because I'm not an academic. I don't have the credentials.
Sure. Understood. I'm just saying that's where that seems like that should sit, because that sounds like a huge undertaking.
Yeah, it is a huge undertaking, and the truth is probably nobody will listen to me because I'm a nobody.
Well, I don't think it's because you're nobody. That's not necessarily what it is, and I think it goes back to something we talked about a little earlier, that we all have so many demands on our time. I had someone, so I'll give you an example. I had someone today inform me, it's my favorite to go on social media and learn about myself. I was informed today in no uncertain terms that I am a limited hangout because I have not ever mentioned 4 words, none of which I know what they mean. They might have been names for all I know. And I didn't mention any of them in my timeline ever. And therefore, because of that, I am a limited hangout. And that means I'm working on behalf of the government. And I don't know what those words are,
Wow.
Joe. I have no idea what they are. I don't know where they came from. I don't know what they're a reference to. I have this vague idea that it might be something about Israel, because that's usually where these people go. And I clicked on that person's profile and it had a bunch of Israel stuff in it. So they're like, doing some kind of hatred of Israel. But at the end of the day, I don't know what they're talking about. And I don't even know where they're like, I don't even know where to begin. And I don't care to go look up those words. But my point to you is that's really important to that person, right? In the same way that maybe comparing the catechisms is very important to you. And anybody who doesn't listen to it and is not reading it, you might be saying, well, this person doesn't have an interest in their faith, and they may not want to do analysis, and they may not have any self-reflection. And at the same time, if you were to say that to someone, it may come off exactly the same way as the person telling me that I'm a limited hangout because I don't respond to their Bonhoeffer or whatever. It wasn't Bonhoeffer, but it's like Hopfnermafter or something like that. It's like all these different words or names that I've never heard of and I'm not interested in. So we have all these different pulls on our own time and attention. And there's only so much time on this earth. And if I had a choice between reading whatever the hell that person was talking about and researching it, or going and playing cards with my kids at night, so that we can learn how to do some basic strategy and work on their memory and help them understand social interactions and how people do things, then I'm going to play Crazy Eights or go fish with my kids 10 times out of 10, because that's way more interesting than reading some crap on social media. And I think other people feel the same way about whatever it is they're passionate about, and you feel the thing about your passion. So it's not necessarily because they're saying they don't care about what you think. That's all I'm saying. That immediately assumes a negative about somebody else, when it might be that they just positively have a different things that they're interested in. That's what I think, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, for sure. But also, I also find that anything that people encounter that would educate them, and if they became educated from it, would mean that they would have to change their lifestyle and their worldview. They're immediately going to just shove it away from themselves.
There's definitely, there's an innate resistance to that. I agree with that. I mean, change is hard and people don't want it. The status quo is undefeated in general. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be the FBI or it could be in your life. Whatever your standard is, there's a biological piece to this too, right? I was listening to some metabolic research, and these guys were talking about the fact that once you hold, let's say, a certain weight and a certain percentage of body fat, and that you've cultivated it with years, let's say, of a certain type of diet, and then you go, you know what? There's too much Kyle, or there's too much Joe. I need to go ahead and cut this thing down. I need to lose some weight and trim up and get back to my fighting weight. Maybe you have that decision. It doesn't, like, if you were to shed that weight, your body will actually defend that new status quo. It will actually try to fight to get back to whatever the weight is that you were trying to get rid of, until you maintain it aggressively for a period of time. And that time period to lock it in is at least a year. And so, we're all basically fighting an uphill battle if we want to change anything about the way you think and about the way that you're interested, or your habits in reading, or your habits in social interactions, or go back to your family. This is something my wife talked about in therapy. Like, whatever interactions you've had with your members of your family, that is the status quo for those reactions, you will be fighting against them if you want to go change them. Try to interact with, do you have siblings? Do you have any?
Oh yeah. I just had one of these interactions the other day. And
you'll find that you repeat patterns. The patterns are the same that you've been doing for years, even when you're trying to approach it in a new way. If I go out and reach out to my siblings and try to say, I've really turned over a new leaf. I'm a different guy than you remember. I want to interact with you like this. They will instinctively, and they will do it impulsively, we'll say, to use our previous discussion. They will impulsively drive back towards an interaction that is familiar to them, which is the way that it always was if you try to do something new. That's just the way that we work. Yeah. There's something very human about that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's part of our fallen nature. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It happened to me with like the dating scene early in my adulthood.
Sure.
I was a very incredibly broken teenager, and so a girl that knew me before I had joined the Navy, she only knew me as an incredibly broken person, but could see the transformation I was undergoing after having been in the Navy for a few years. So she just like flat out rejected me.
Sure.
Based on what shit you knew about me from before.
and didn't have the
it's just,
capacity to
that's
grasp
part of
that there was a
human
change.
nature. Yeah.
No, I think we all hold on to those things.
And that's definitely exactly what my family still does to me. And they can't. I was so sheltered as a kid and teenager, and I didn't have any of the normal freedoms that young teenage men had. I had a friend in the homeschool group who was running his own construction business and making tons of money at the age of 17. Meanwhile, I'm stuck at home and I'm not even allowed to have a job or a driver's license.
Yeah, no, we all, I think, and for whatever reason, and this is really hard, whatever reason, that was the path that you were supposed to be on. And that was the perfect way for you to be, as imperfect as it feels, which is really, really hard, because at some point you may look back and go like, I understand. Or maybe you never will. But I mean, isn't that kind of the difficult thing? Because that reminds me of the Serenity Prayer quite a bit. I think my dad and I talked about this the last time that he was sitting here with me. But, you know, there are things we can change, and we're supposed to because we can. And there are things that we cannot, because they are either permanent or they are as they should be. and the real difficulty is, can you figure out which things you're going to be, beating your head against a brick wall on, and which things are you supposed to be able to mold and shape and fix and change as you can. And that's what discernment is. And we all struggle with it, man. It's like, that's universal. That doesn't even have to be a Christian principle. Like, I think all people have struggled with this, because they realize there's plenty of things they can't handle. And it's too big for us.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've never fit in anywhere. I'm always had blue collar jobs, but I don't fit in with the blue collar workers, partly because a lot of them didn't respect me for not being at where they were at when they had all the opportunity in the world to acquire skills as a kid and as a teenager. And I left home not having any skills. So they kind of like, hey, why aren't you where I'm at?
Sure.
Why don't you know this and that about various things? And then on the intellectual side, it's like, well, people, all the academics that I've known, well, the overwhelming majority of them, has just like dismissed me. Like, you never went to college, so then how can you possibly know what you're talking about?
There's a lot of credentialism. I would agree with that. That usually comes from a place of fear, in my experience. People who, some of my smartest friends they're not the most educated friends I have, but they're the most perceptive and insightful. So, some people are going to just lean on credentials. Those people tend to need those credentials to be able to justify something. I can dismiss that, but I don't have to say that they're bad people. I just go, okay, well, your value system is based on something. That's an appeal, if you're going to look into the logical world. To do credentialism and say you have to have a degree of some kind in order to have a discussion with me, that's an appeal to authority, and I don't recognize it. Your authority is not recognized in my eyes. Because I know plenty of people that are much brighter than many PhDs. A lot of PhDs are so minute in their focus, they know very little about many things. They don't have a broad swath of experience. They are very deep and very, very narrow. And I'm more interested in people that have maybe shallow and wide experience or shallow and deep experience. So, but to each their own on that one. I don't think that we're not built the way that we're supposed to be because of that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I've never read a dissertation that was generalist in nature.
Nobody does them. That's not because you have to scope. You have to craft the argument. And this is the nature of academia. So there's some discussion about this, and I feel like I listened to it on a Rogan podcast. It was two guys that were talking about academia and the nature of Western knowledge, which is to say that atomization is the way of the West. That people learning the most about one narrow topic and becoming so specialized, that's where we found value. That's how we say, that's how you could have a quote unquote expert in fill in the blank thing that has only happened one time, or a very specific disease that only affects 30 or 40 people in the world. And you go, oh, it's so amazing. But the only way that you can have that high degree of specificity and that atomization of intellectual knowledge is that we've already accomplished so much on the general level that the generalists are keeping the world running. So some people can climb into a rabbit hole that is so deep that they can't see anything except what's in it. And and that is only like, that world is new, relatively speaking, because there didn't used to be a place for those people. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's better. But if you knew nothing about, I have a friend that I grew up to high school with, and he got a PhD in some sort of laser science. And so if that's what you're focused on and you think that's the most important thing in the world, and I don't care about lasers because I don't do anything with lasers ever, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I drive a diesel pickup truck, so lasers are not useful to me. Like, I don't think they're involved in me getting down to the grocery store and back. You could imagine that would be threatening because his whole life's work has nothing to do with what I do in my life, and probably very little to do with what you're doing in your life too. Probably most of our chat, to be fair.
Yeah, I had a discussion with a friend one time because there was a priest going around, and he was formulating arguments as to why we could not even enter a Novus Ordo church, based on certain less than ideal practices that occur within the Freemasonic liturgy of the New World Order.
Okay.
And which I attend regularly because it's an hour drive to get to NETLM.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody calls me what do they call them? People that say that the Novus Ordo liturgy is invalid altogether. There's no sacramental presence there.
Uh-huh.
I'm not one of those.
Sure.
So,
well, let me.
Usually they call.
Yeah, but let's broaden this out because one of the things you mentioned was acceptance, and I'm going to give you a challenge, and maybe we'll leave that for the night as a thought. One of the things that I remember from a very introductory it wasn't even a class I was in. One of my buddies went to a anthropology class. I'm trying to remember. He's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
He's actually introduced me to my wife. All right. So there's an anthropology class he went through. And I remember him coming back and having like this kind of moment of revelation, and or he was just messing with me. Either way, it doesn't matter. And he said, do you know what binds societies together? Do you know what principle binds societies together? And I didn't have an answer. Do you have a guess on that? You've lived more life than I did when I was 18 or 20, whenever this happened.
Well, I'm only 36.
I understand, but I was about 18 when he asked me this, so I didn't know the answer to this. But
okay.
The answer to this,
binds everything.
Yeah, what binds human
again?
beings? What binds our human societies together? What is the principle that makes us stay and have cohesiveness in society? It's a really broad.
I don't know.
And I didn't either.
I don't know what an anthropologist would say.
So according to this particular guy that my friend was listening to, the concept of reciprocity was an underlying and fundamental tenet of society functioning. There has to be a give and a take. There has to be an ask and a receive between people. And there are reasons why. There are cultural norms that go along with it, and there are methods that are described by culture. But the concept of reciprocity existing across all different bands of human beings, there is some idea of reciprocity. And from that, is particularly in the West, you can find that if you want to make a connection with people, the worst way to do it in our American society and in our English speaking world is to go and offer somebody something that you have of value. That is immediately the off-putting thing to do, which, by the way, that sounds like the opposite of what we would think, right? Like you wanted to write a book and you want to present that and make that available to people. And that would be a service that you would see of value. And you're like, look, I'm offering this thing. I want to put my time, my blood, my sweat and my effort into it. And I'm going to make this available to people. And people may not want it because what you're saying is, I have this thing, take it. The implied part of that reciprocity is that there's a payback that comes your way. And so the easiest way to build social credit, and this is just a weird thing that exists, and try it. I encourage you to try it. Ask for a favor.
For a favor.
Right?
Yeah.
You've heard this before. So rather than going into a group and saying, look, I have no skills, which is humble, but to go in and say, you're really good at doing this thing. I'd love to, if you had a few minutes to show me how to do this thing better. Do you think you could make a couple of moments for me to be able to demonstrate this skill? Because who doesn't like having someone in their debt, and who doesn't like demonstrating something that they have a high level of proficiency? And so but it's the exact opposite of what we think as men, where you want to stand on your own 2 feet and hold on to things and prove your capabilities. It's a submission in some ways, but it's also really effective.
Yeah, I think Jocko Willink actually talked about it several times.
I'm sure of it. This is not like a novel concept that I've come up with. It's just a thing that I've observed over time, and I've known plenty of people that understand this. If you want to, but this is also a biblical principle, right? If you want to be good at something, and this is humbling yourself. This is, making yourself the last. Even though you think you might be good at some other things that people need to know, you find the thing that you are the last at, and you make yourself the last at it instead of being first in a room and saying, "Look at the greatness that I have." You go out and humble yourself, and people resonate with that. They always do. It's if you find people that will be humble and self-deprecating, not self-insulting, but just allowing other people to know that you're fair game for fun comments, and you can take you can take a ribbing, but more importantly, that you're willing to learn from other people, and you're willing to put yourself in other people's debt. It's so strange, because that's a really ingratiating thing, to be able to put yourself in other people's debt.
Well, what's interesting is that there's a lot of social skill involved with doing all that.
But you can do it mechanically too. That's the thing, because I've listened to the way your brain works over the last several times we've spoken, and I know that you have the capacity to mechanically work out how to do that. And it might be a little bit stilted. You know what I mean? Like, you might be doing it in the military, or when we teach how to do a school. We want to teach you how to do a draw of a handgun. We want to teach you how to do a reload of a magazine. We do it what they say by the numbers. So 1 is like, my hand goes to my chest. 2, my hand goes straight down to my waistline. 3 is my fingers grip the grip of the handgun. 4 is I break the retention. 5 is I make the first draw upwards. So there's these numbers. You could do it mechanically, where you're like, my first step is to say something like, "You're very good at this thing. And my second step is to, ask for this thing." And you could work out what that formula looks like. I'm confident in it. Like, that would be well within your capabilities, like a checklist, and then to do it. And the more you did it, the more comfortable you'd get doing so. But that's how social skills evolve, by the way, Joe. Like, that's what it is. They start off as a checklist. They usually just start with our parents when we're younger. Think about programming your kids. You do it mechanically.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, "What do we say?" And they go, "What?" And you go, "What do you say? What's the magic word?" And they go, "The magic word is please." And you're like, "Okay, put it in a sentence."
Yeah.
How do you, and they're like, "May I please have this thing?" And you go, "Yes, you may." Very good. Right. And then so you get the attaboy, and they did it very mechanically, and you had to walk them through all the steps. And at the end of it, you get a kid who's 7 or 8, maybe, who says, "May I please have this thing?" And you go, "Yeah, like, what a polite child." Or maybe you don't get that person, and you have to program them when they're 20, so they don't come up and act like a rude person, and they can get some success, because otherwise they won't be successful. People will go like, "Dude, that person's an asshole. I want nothing to do with them." And you can reprogram any of us.
What would you say to this mechanics?
Go ahead.
What would you say to this mechanics?
Sure.
Because my kids have a habit of saying, "Hey, I'm hungry," and they just expect you to go get the food.
Right. Yeah,
"Hey,
you have to break
Daddy,
that.
I'm thirsty." And so what I do, I developed a saying, and I say, "That is a statement, not a polite request." And then they know to change their.
So that's one tactic, right? There's a lot of different tactics. You can do it with humor. A lot, like the classic dad humor is, someone says, "I'm hungry," and you go, "Oh, well, it's nice to meet you, hungry. I'm Dad."
Yeah, I've done that too.
Sure, you have to, because kids can respond in different ways. You try all the tactics and you get them to do something. You can politely instruct them, and you're correct. You're pointing out that they're making a statement and they're not making a request, and so then they have to, if they want to make a request, they're going to have to do that if they have the capacity. But maybe you got, when my younger ones do it, I say, "You're not asking for anything, and And I'm not inclined to do it because you're not even being polite. You know, it's hard for me to hear you when you say things that way. You know what makes me understand you is when you say things like, please, may I have this thing? And then I know what you want. You know, so there's different ways you could break it down. We could do the same thing as adults. We can still learn things the same way we did as kids. It just feels a lot more awkward because when we were kids, we don't have all of that ego behind it. We don't have all that self-esteem that makes us feel like we're above it. At the end of the day, if you're not learning, you know, if you're not learning, you're on the way out. So you can learn new behaviors by practicing them. And, you know, and then you can learn old behaviors that you used to know that were good, and you can practice them too. I'm doing them right now. I'm doing stuff that I used to do right out of basic training when I was 27 and 28. So that's going back, you know, we're going back 15, 16 years in my history, and I'm relearning how to do some of the water skills that I had because of the discipline that it afforded me. And I feel like it's useful. I want to be able to go and discipline my lungs and my brain to not fight for air and to be more confident in being, you know, very uncomfortable, which is what happens when you're drowning. Like I learned how to do that a long time ago. So I'm retouching base with that, but I'm having to go through the same exercises I used to a long time ago. And so you can, you know, that just takes humility saying I'm not there, but I was, and I can learn it again. Or I never got this instruction when I was a kid. So I'm going to instruct myself. I'm going to go mechanically learn how to engage with people that I think have skills that are useful or that are my peer group, but don't seem to associate with me. How do I connect with them?
Yeah.
And you know what the best thing is? Because it's the thing you talked about with my father when he was on. It's 100% on you, working on you, and the results will be experienced by you, but other people will get to have the benefit of them as well. So that's a double whammy.
Yeah, that Tumble House show I told you about, they had the perfect closing.
Share it.
They say, and whose souls you might save may be your own.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And oftentimes that's the thing, like doing, I mean, there's stories by O. Henry about it and so on. I mean, you go out there and that you try to do the thing for someone else and you realize that the person that you actually ended up improving was yourself. That's very common throughout literature. It's common throughout people who are thinkers. And it's the story of many people's redemption arc is that they went out trying to solve somebody else's problem in a good way. And it ended up being the salvation for themselves. So how about that?
Yeah.
That's more hopeful than where we started. Just saying.
Yeah. I have a lot of so many thoughts that I could never convey in one phone call, but
yeah, well, we do it every week, and the line is open every week, and you have the option to call in. I'll tell you this though, and the one thing that I see quite frequently is that the more that you spend thinking about it and not doing things, being wrapped up in your own head is that is debilitating. We all get there. We all find ourselves at some point in time where we're looking inward and trying to solve the problem that we can't. And I guess the funniest thing for me is that more often than not, if I just start doing things, then solutions start presenting themselves. And that if I am just working on the problem in my head and trying to solve it through just brute force thinking, it's like I might as well just be looking at my own navel. I might as well just be walking and looking down at my belly button all day.
Yeah, that's a very scientifically proven fact that sometimes if you multitask with your thoughts, you come up with a solution rather than giving the one subject your full concentration.
That's right.
Or you go do an activity, like maybe stop what you're doing and you do 20 jumping jacks or go for a walk. And then your brain builds up all these endorphins and that activity gives you the brain power that you need to solve the problem.
That's right. Listen, it's a physics concept too, which is essentially the law of inertia, which is that bodies in motion tend to stay in motion and bodies that are in stagnation tend to stay stagnant. So moving being that movement, and then while moving, you will have other motions that happen around you. And, that can happen for our brains too, as we're working. So that's the encouragement. That's my pep talk for you. As you go out there, is sometimes don't solve the problem that needs to be solved that you have to devote all your energy to. Just solve the things that are in front of you as they present themselves. In the military and in law enforcement, we'll call them sometimes targets of opportunity. It's like, I can do that. I'm going to do that one. I'm going to knock down this task. I'm going to go solve this little problem that needs to be done. Why? Because it can be done. That door needs tightening. I need to go and put a screwdriver to it and make sure that it's not rattling anymore. I'm going to switch out this little, I broke a faceplate on a outlet the other day. So I'm going to replace that maybe. It's like small stuff. And while I'm at the store, I'll remember, oh yeah, I also wanted to do this other thing. And now you're in motion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And yeah, maybe you make a couple trips. Like yesterday, I went to the store and I forgot that I needed to bring my propane and swap out my canister. So be it. I'll go back another day and I'll solve some other problem. And maybe I'm supposed to be there to meet somebody and step into their life in a positive way, in some small way. Who knows? I don't know what the plan is. but I don't force myself to know anymore. My life's been too weird in the last few years for me to guess that I have any answers. And I imagine you'll probably get there too. Like eventually you just realize it's like, I don't have the answers, but I'm not even supposed to. Like, I can actually trust that God's got me in his hand. I don't have to think nearly as hard as I think I should. Because if I do, I'm just going to be upset and still not solving the same problem.
Yeah.
Just saying, sometimes letting it come to you is important.
Yeah, I've had to let go of a lot of things. With the divorce and all these other things that have been going on in my life, I just keep getting dealt blow after blow after blow after blow. Mm-hmm. And over the last 3 years, it's just really been like the culmination of hardship in my entire life. And
or it's the beginning of you understanding what you were learning. I listened to Tucker Carlson say this. I brought this up with somebody else in the last couple of days, so it's in the fresh part of my head. Tucker Carlson said, I never learned anything from success. Ever.
Yeah.
Nobody learns anything from success. You can look at it in a darker way. Only the enemy can tell you where you are weak and where he is strong. But in terms of life and solutions, you're never going to learn very much from being successful. You're going to learn from failure. You're going to learn something that didn't work. 100% guarantee that.
Yeah.
Even if it's only just one way that it didn't work, you probably learned a ton in the last couple of years, whether you liked it or not. They don't feel good. They're not good feeling lessons to fail or to have failure around you.
No, I have learned so much, and I've just learned, if I hadn't gone through all these hardships and been dealt so many blows, I would have only had one way to know how to beat the system. Mm-hmm. But now I know 10 ways.
That's not nothing. As my friend from Long Island says, that's not nothing. It's not nothing though. It really isn't. It's like, so you could be grateful for that. You could be grateful for experiencing it and walking away with some knowledge. But you're not going to be grateful in the moment when you're failing. That feels terrible. So you could also accept that it feels terrible and you didn't like it. And at the same time, now you say, aha, I learned something. I've already done this. We do this in military training as well. It's called stress inoculation. We put you in a terrible situation that you don't want to be in, so that if you're in that situation for real. The great example is a guy named Mike Durant. Mike Durant was the Black Hawk pilot from the movie Black Hawk Down, but obviously in the real story, the Battle of Mogadishu. And his Black Hawk went down and he was taken into a crappy room in Somalia in Mogadishu. And he was interrogated with a broken leg, and his friend had just been killed. And the Delta Force operators that were sent there to protect him were killed. And so he's in a hostile place being held as a non-traditional POW. Really awful situation in a third world country, right? And with like a broken leg. And maybe a pelvis crush as well. He was really bad shape. And he said the minute somebody walked through the door to interrogate him, which they did, he immediately flashed back to his survival training, his SEER training, because he'd already been put in a not very fun situation in training. and he had the skills then to cope with it. And that's a really powerful thing. You can inoculate yourself against all kinds of stress. So you can embrace small failure, knowing that if you're put in that spot again, you've already been there, at some degree, and you'll be more successful and you'll recover quickly. That's real. I've done it too many times. There's way too many things I've done where it's like, oh, I had a taste of this failure once before, and now I know better. But you can never do it. You never understand that in the moment. I'll share you that. It's always after the fact that you get to appreciate it. So when you're going through some crappy stuff, and it sounds like you've had a rough couple years, you'll know later, and you'll look back and you'll forget that it was that hard. I promise you that. That's always the case. Everybody who's gone through a hard time looks back a couple years later and goes like, man, I think that was a really difficult time in my life. but I don't feel it anymore. I just remember the lessons from it.
I have more of an elephant kind of memory. I don't forget so easy.
That's fair. Just give it a couple years. Everybody told me that 40, I would start remembering less things. It took to about 42 or 43, but it does slowly. Some of this stuff does dull over time, no matter how sharp your memory is.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't really show. Every time I listen to myself talk to you on the phone, I just think I sound so retarded.
No, you sound like you're thinking. You sound like you spend a lot of time thinking. That's what it sounds like to me, having been around a lot of people that have a very active internal monologue. And it sounds like you spend a lot of time thinking through problems and trying to solve them. And, some of them you will, and some of them you certainly won't.
Yeah, I do have quite the capacity to think. I always marvel at the people I'm surrounded with who have no capacity to think.
Yeah, we can't judge them either. They're doing something else. That's not we're not on their journey, whatever that journey looks like, man. But I see them. They're out there. It's an easy thing to remember. 50% of the world is below average. So 1 in 2 people.
I wouldn't know.
You can't get mad at them for just being the way they were created, right?
Behind that anyways.
There's a lot of people out there that are working slow and not solving problems, and who are we to we judge them because that's the way we're built. We all look and go, oh man, that idiot, and at the same time we're no better off for it. So unless we do that, probably the happier we'll be.
Yeah, one thing, going back to the hardship thing, it's like I discovered things about myself that I had no idea I was capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've had to learn how to pivot and adapt to new factors that were just adding to the restrictions and the obstacles. They were new obstacles for me to overcome, and not just different ones, but in addition to the ones I already had. So I've had to change my strategies. And even though I've not beat the system yet, and what I mean by beat the system is being in a place where I can be debt free, and the only leverage they could have against me is property tax.
Yes, I get it.
I won't have to worry about them having leverage over me because of a mortgage or because of utility bills. They won't be able to just shut off my electricity like they did in California to those who are not complying with the COVID mandates.
Right.
I see. That's a subject for another day that I need to talk to you about, because I want to know how much you know about all the different rules they have against us or for us, because they have laws. They have mandates, they have codes, they have, there's so many different names for rules that they have for us. And maybe you can articulate those for me. What?
Yeah, you just laid out a bunch
help me understand those.
All you made me think about is that the founding fathers would be stacking bodies by now, because they lost their mind over a couple percent tax on on tea, right? It's just, we've slowly let ourselves be very, very dominated. And a lot of it comes from all the comfort that we have around us, I think. I think we're addicted to it. So people, maybe that's your purpose in struggling, is that you will be much more suited for hardship in the future, which does seem like it's coming our way, whether we like it or not. I feel like we've got some hard times coming in the near future. Whatever,
I have no doubt, because I have no doubt. There's just, people are just way too comfortable.
That's right.
And no empire or nation in all of history has ever reversed its course.
That's right.
In decline. There's always got to be some kind of reset. Now, how extreme that reset may be varies from place to place, but it always happens.
It is inevitable, no doubt about it. Let's table this for now. Let's come back to it. I want to hear about a reciprocity, even if it's mechanical. I want you to try to put yourself in somebody's debt, not in a big way. Like don't incur a debt, but put yourself in a favor debt sometime in the next time before you talk to me, and tell me what it is. I just want to know how it goes.
I'm incurring debt.
Yeah, go incur a debt, a social debt. Don't incur a social debt. That seems like a thing that should be good enough to do. And let me know how it goes.
I'm doing that too.
Yeah, I mean, we're all doing that. All right, buddy. Chin up. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend here as best you can. Just remember, if you're suffering, there's something you're learning from it. So don't beat yourself up too much. And we'll do it again soon. We'll talk about this again. And like I said, tell me about the debt you put yourself in, whatever weird situation that comes up in. It'll be organic. You'll know when it's time. I for some reason I know that.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Have a nice night, Joe.
You too. Thank you.
All right, Bye. You bet. All right, there's been a little request, you all, from your favorite, what is it called? Irreverent palate cleanse. I got you covered here. Here's what's his name? Tony? What's the other guy's name?
What's your name? What? What is your name? Tony! Fuck you, Tony! What's your name? Ezekiel! Fuck you, Ezekiel! Fuck you! Fuck you! Hey, you know what I did last night? You better not bring my mother into this! You know what I did? You better not! I broke that fly over there! Oh! And I fucked your mother next to it! Fuck you, Ezekiel! Fuck you! Fuck you!
You guys are such a foul-mouthed crew. Everybody requesting that. I don't know why that makes your heart sing, but you're my people, so I appreciate it. I'm going to wrap it up for the night. It's 9:10 here in Texas, so it's probably late in some areas. It's still early in the places where you other live under communism, and best of luck out there. We'll do this in the morning. I believe I'm going to have a Steve friend on board with me, so we'll do a Friendly Friday tomorrow for those of you that are going to join us in the morning, and I hope you will. And we'll see how Steve friend has been handling some of this Dash Pongino. By the way, I had a lady tell me she didn't like Dash Pongino. She thought it was very disrespectful. And I actually I'll share some inside baseball from Brandon Stracco, who texted me and said, I don't get it. What's up with Dash Pongino? And I'm like, it's Dan and Cash combined, and then it's Patel and Bongino combined. It's Dash Pongino. And he goes, oh, it's like Brangelina. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I don't keep track of pop culture, but apparently it's like Brangelina. You guys tell me what the hell that is in the comments. All right. I hope you guys have a good night. Let's wrap it up, and we'll do it again next week. Get some sleep, y'all.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.